I now give the floor to His Excellency Robert Dussey, Minister of State, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Regional Integration of Togo.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President, ladies, heads of state, of government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing the warmest congratulations of the President of the Togolese Republic, His Excellency for to the President for her well-deserved election to the presidency of this regular 73rd session of the Assembly, and also assure her of the support of my country, Togo. I would also like to pay a well-deserved tribute to your predecessor, Mr. Miroslav Lajčák, on his masterly presidency of the General Assembly. I'd particularly like to commend the sense of humanity and practical wisdom of our Secretary General Antonio Guterres on his clearly expressed commitment, his daily work to foster the principles and values of our organization. Madam President, let me welcome the appropriate choice of the topics for this session, which makes us all focus on an essential and fundamental issue at stake, to decentralize responsibilities in the United Nations in order to place the institution in tune with world realities. This is a pluralistic and multipolar world, and to take this fact into account means certainly expanding the basis of legitimacy and effectiveness of organization in the world. The reform of the United Nations is not so much a wish as a logical necessity. The world has evolved, new problems and new actors have emerged. The planet today is suffering from violent extremism, and terrorism threatens the world. We must shoulder the new form of responsibilities that have appeared. Our institution, as a hub of collective responsibility throughout the world, must update itself in its organization and the way it works if it truly wants effectively to play the role of an institution at the service to our human community. The time has come, as stated by Thomas Kuhn, to invent a new paradigm. Madam President, let me here reiterate the support and adhesion of my country to the initiative of thorough reform of our organization, as undertaken by the Secretary General, which is rightly based on an open and inclusive process which takes into account the three main institutional pillars of the UN system, which are peace and security, development, and management structure. This initiative of reform based on restructuring the peace and security pillar will help make the institution more pragmatic and effective. The connection between peace, security, and development no longer needs to be demonstrated. Without peace and security, there can be no sustainable development, and we couldn't secure development and build resilient and durable societies. The new architecture of peace and security of the United Nations must be in close relationship with the expanded development pillar in respect and promotion of human rights, as well as enhancement of humanitarian action. The current reform must reposition the UN development system to adjust it to the new demands of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda in order ultimately to attain the Sustainable Development Goals and to leave behind abject poverty as well as national global inequalities. The UN must help more to face up to the lack of development in the world. An extra step forward in this deficit in development will help our world to get entire populations to leave behind the misery position and condition, and will give back to them autonomy and control over their own lives. The new development system of the organization must match the requirement of building a world wherein every country enjoys sustainable, inclusive, and lasting economic growth. What we must do is to reposition the system with considerable adjustments in skills, direction, and mechanisms of coordination and accountability. This new structure of development mechanisms must also lead to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. The challenges of climate change are vital, and a response should not await further. Our response to the challenges of climate change is something that goes hand in hand with the promotion of partnerships and innovating mechanisms of financing development in keeping with the Addis Ababa Action Program. Regarding the management pillar of reform, which is ongoing, we see with satisfaction that the considerable changes envisaged respond to the need to improve the methods of administration of internal management of the organization, ensuring simplification of procedures and decentralization of its action, and investment in people in order better to respond to the requirements of sustaining development and the building of a peaceful world. To invest in people means development and peace in the world. The reform in question today is designed to make the UN a more dynamic and competent organization. These are current world challenges which invites us to strengthen the United Nations. The challenges facing Africa today are huge. Our continent remains confronted with new forms of crises and problems. Africa, unfortunately, is home today to centers of terrorism in certain regions, and countries and populations who aspire legitimately to calm every day have to face barbaric acts stemming from violent extremism, ignorance, religious intolerance, and ideological fanaticism. Poverty is still there in Africa, and African populations are awaiting better days. The consequences of climate change are terrible. Migration which decimates whole segments of African youth. The issues linked to migration and human tragedies require that we display a sense of collective responsibility and require just and sustainable responses. In this regard, our government calls upon all stakeholders to give pride of place to a participative approach and consensus in the negotiations that we are involved in, and work to the determination to adopt at the end of the Marrakesh conference on 10 and 11 December of this year of a world compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. You will certainly agree with me that the emergence of peaceful, equitable, prosperous, and lasting sustaining societies, which we wholeheartedly hope for, cannot happen if we do not have mutually advantageous, effective, and innovative partnerships. For this purpose, the UN, in order fully to play its role of coordination, should base its action more on regional and sub-regional organizations in the sphere of international peace and security and development. Madam President, in Africa, where we have acute problems of development, the governments have become aware of the need to speed up the process of regional integration in order to pull development efforts and strategies to fight poverty, as recommended in Agenda 2063 of the African Union and the Universal Programme of Sustainable Development. There are many ongoing initiatives further to strengthen this integration. In this connection, Togo is pleased with the appointment of his president by his peers to lead the project to establish a single market for air transport in Africa, an important instrument of economic integration of the continent. The efforts are going on to mobilize states to sign the solemn engagement to create this market. Regarding international peace and security, as a matter of priority today, we are compelled to enhance international cooperation in peacekeeping operations and fighting terrorism. We must redouble efforts to put an end to conflicts, especially in Africa and in many other regions of the world. We must here express a well-deserved tribute to the main role which the United Nations has always played in the world by means of various peacekeeping operations whose majority unfortunately concerns the African continent. In passing, let me say how happy I am at the peace agreement between the protagonists of the South Sudan crisis and call for the implementation of commitments undertaken for peace in that country. As a member of the African Union Peace and Security Council, we believe that greater cooperation between the peacekeeping structures of the United Nations and operational mechanisms of the African Union are imperative. The resolution adopted by the General Assembly last June on the occasion of the biennial review of the United Nations World Strategy to Fight Terrorism means that we must act accordingly. In this connection, the Togo government welcomes the holding in Lomé on 30 July of this year at the occasion of the mandate of Togo as president of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of ESCWA, of the first joint summit of heads of state of government of ESCWA and the Economic Community of Central African States on peace, security, stability, and fighting terrorism. This meeting, a first of its kind, organized upon the initiative of the two sub-regions, led to the creation of a mechanism of prevention and preservation and the maintenance of peace in the common space of the two communities in order to enable the United Nations to assert its leadership role to be played effectively and fully as guarantor of peace and international stability. It is essential to continue and complete the reform of the Security Council. The reform of our organization will not be complete if it does not also entail the reform of the Security Council. The new approach, focusing on a shared vision of responsibilities, recommends that all member states of the United Nations become involved in solutions to problems of international peace and security. Thus, the Security Council has expanded in order to have a greater and more equitable representation of all regions of the world, would contribute to rendering more effective the accomplishment of its important mission. Although my country is pleased to consult at the consultations held this year, allowing states and groups to make proposals to enrich discussions, we wonder about the results of those negotiations, which have clearly not moved for 28 years. at the national plan. Togo shares the common commitment of UN member states in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. For the government of Togo, it is a matter of turning our country into a middle-income country, which will be economically, socially, and democratically stable and open to the rest of the world. The National Development Program, which was recently adopted, is in keeping with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the 2020 vision of the Economic Community, the ESCWA, for Agenda 2063 of the African Union. It is determined to transform the structures to be more inclusive and resilient. Togo strives to improve the standard of living of its citizens and contribute, together with the UN, to reduce the pockets of poverty in a world which is in the process of changing. In this connection, I'd like to express my gratitude to partners in development who have already expressed themselves to support my country in this ambitious and difficult task. Sustainable development also means the development of human rights. The establishment of fair and free society means building a better and more secure world. Here, Togo is resolutely pursuing its process of constitutional and institutional reforms in order to strengthen democratic gains and guarantee rights and freedoms to all. The government, in the face of this perspective, strives to bring solutions, final solutions, to the political misunderstanding we've seen around the last few months, and to bring together the political class as well as civil society around the challenges of the common objectives of peace, progress, and social and human progress. ECOWAS is in regional solidarity with Togo, tackles these difficult political problems. It has, through Ghana's and Guinea's facilitation, helped the Togolese political class to agree on the equalitarian recomposition of the National Independent Electoral Commission in order to go ahead with the planned legislative elections on 20 December of this year. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Secretary General Kofi Annan, who left us last year, to him we pay well-deserved tribute and gratitude for his admirable commitment and the service of peace in the world, said on 24 September of 2001, the only way forward which offers some hope for a better future for all of mankind is cooperation and partnership. It is thus by working together that we will be able to build the kind of world we want to leave to future generations. Thank you.
I thank the Minister of State, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Regional Integration of Togo for his statement. We have heard the last speaker in the general debate for this meeting, and we will continue the general debate tomorrow at 9 a.m. in this hall. Before we adjourn, the exercise of the right of reply has been requested. May I remind members that statements in the exercise of the right of reply are limited to 10 minutes for the first intervention and to 5 minutes for the second intervention, and should be made by delegations from their seats. I now call on the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.